So we're going to be talking about the worlds, rating the atmosphere of each of the levels, surface, sky, and depths, and then also rating the gameplay, because for me, sometimes there can be a big divide in that. You might love the atmosphere, but it's like, yeah, but the gameplay was or vice versa. So beginning with the sky, personally, and we'll say out of like 5 stars. Personally, I give the sky's atmosphere like 4.5 stars, of only because it does get repetitive, which that'll get into the gameplay. I love the colors, I love the sounds, I love the music, I love all the constructs, and there is a decent amount to do, and it's just a beautiful place to be. I actually didn't really explore it till towards the end of my gameplay, though. I don't know why. I just didn't. Especially the type of gamer I am, I'm surprised I did the depths first. But anyway, and for gameplay, I would personally rate it 3.5? Like, I don't want to be mean, but it does get repetitive, and it is a lot of the same thing over and over again, which can be great, and I did still enjoy it. I would have liked a tiny bit more variety, but yeah. So let's start with Draken, your rating and a few sentences about atmosphere and gameplay of the sky.
On atmosphere, I would give it like a 4, I think. I really like the golden and the clouds that sometimes pass through and you just covered in fog for a brief moment while it passes away. And the sunsets, oh my god, the sunsets and sunrises, it's just beautiful. But like, I feel like it's missing a bit of variety, not in terms of, well, in terms of gameplay too, but like I'm talking about atmosphere right now. It lacks a bit of variety in terms of biomes, I should say, because it's, besides the tiny patch of snow on Great Sky Island, and I think there was one more island that was snowy above Flaneiru Mountain, then besides that, everything else is just the golden trees and golden grass, and I'm like, really? You couldn't do like 1 or 2 more, maybe? I don't know. So that's that on atmosphere. And for gameplay, I'm actually going to be more mean than you. I'm gonna give it a 2, because it was fairly enjoyable until it started getting repetitive. Because I just can't with the freaking Ferry the Crystal missions. There is so many of them, and you start recognizing patterns. Okay, this is this plus-shaped island, and there is another island over there, so that's probably in a cave on that island. There is a little pocket in that island, and then you're gonna go there, you're gonna grab the crystal, you're gonna put it probably on a wing and ferry it back. If it's not there, then it's probably on a flux construct, and you just basically could, by the end of this string of missions, I just didn't go to the shrine first. When I saw that complex of islands, I instantly knew where the crystal is, so I just went straight for the crystal. So yeah, it could have been better.
I think that's fair. All right, Adam.
It's tough because I don't know, the game felt like they really pushed it in the marketing so much, but I think, was it atmosphere wise?
Mm-hmm.
I would give it a solid 4.5. I think the only reason I wouldn't go fully to the 5 is just for reasons already said. I feel like it could have done with a little more variety. I don't know, even if it matches up with what's below, like islands around Death Mountain, maybe they could add a little bit of fire or lava or something, and same goes to all the other regions. Like, it really does feel like they were very, very copy and pasted to a degree. Gameplay wise, I think I gotta be harsh and go 2 as well. I think I'd give it a point for the traversal, because that is very, very fun. I cannot complain about that. I enjoyed the puzzles enough to warrant a point, but I don't think there was enough variety. Similar to the points just mentioned, I feel like a lot of it gets very predictable. After 1 or 2, you kind of know what you're gonna do. You kind of know you're looking for the crystal, like you said. And it's pretty easy after a few times. Even just a little bit more variety would get that up a little bit in the gameplay, but Yeah, it's got to be a 2 out of 5 for me on gameplay. And that really does rely on the traversal being that good. That's what holds ground there.
Love not auto hand. Different ability. Ultra hand. I mean, you use that too, but still. All right, Nehru, your
It's so
thoughts.
So my second last video is a video called Tears of the Kingdom's Biggest Failure, and in the thumbnail in big words it says the sky, so I think that probably successfully conveys my feelings on the sky overall. I was hugely disappointed by it in almost every aspect. I love Tears of the Kingdom. I'm very critical of it in a lot of ways, but I still think it's a really excellent game. I like it quite a bit more than Breath of the Wild. But the sky in particular was just a huge disappointment for me. For atmosphere, I'm going to give it, I think, the lowest so far at a 3, because everything is beautiful and wonderful the first time you encounter it, and then you encounter it a million more times on a million more islands, and it stops feeling special. Like that, those oasis islands where the fairies come out and you can gather the ancient fish. That was beautiful the first time I ran into it, like breathtakingly beautiful. And I was like, oh, what a beautiful island. I can't wait to see what the rest of the islands are like. And then I encountered that island like 6 more times with almost no variation. And that is sort of a good explanation for all the island types. It's just very repetitive. You find crumbled Zonai ruins and you go, oh, this is so cool. I can't wait to glean some environmental storytelling out of this and see what it has to offer. And then you find the exact same ruin pattern on a dozen other islands, and you're like, oh, okay, never mind. Not to say there isn't some stuff to glean, but like that island was not unique when the exact same ruin pattern is on 7 or 8 others. And the biome thing is just, in my opinion, rather inexcusable, right? There's no reason they couldn't have given some sort of diversity in visual design across the different islands and have like the Zonai Islands over top of the snow region be snowy. And it's very funny because a lot of people complain about the depths being too visually similar. Sorry about that. A lot of people complain about the depths being too visually similar, but I actually think that that's not true. I think the depths have a lot of visual variety compared to the sky. Like you have multiple different types of trees down there that all grow in one section, and that's not much, but it's more than the sky has. And in the depths you have the areas where there is veins of flowing lava, which add quite a bit of visual variety, which the sky has nothing like that. And you have areas where there are like big rivers and massive creeks, which again the sky has nothing. Well, I guess it has kind of that with the waterfall ones in the Zora's domain. But yeah, it is really unfortunate. I just turned my phone off. Why is it turning back on? I'm so sorry. For reference,
It doesn't want to stop.
My
It's
sister,
determined.
my girlfriend's sister is in labor right now, so my phone is going off the hook because of many different family chats going off the hook because of that. But yeah, long story short, I thought the atmosphere of the sky was excellent at first, and then every time you run into the exact same thing again in a different part of the map, it loses a little bit of specialness. As for gameplay, I'm going to give it a 2 as well, because there's just nothing to do up there, you know? There are basically 3 things to do up there. There are finding Koroks, which is just what you're doing on the ground, but in the sky. There are solving those crystal, bring the crystal from one island to another to open up a shrine. And then there are the occasional shrine that are detached, like the ones in the giant floating moons. And then the islands that are related to the story. And then once in a while you'll get an island that has some sort of fun little thing, like the one where you have to let the water out in order to get down to the treasure chest. Once in a while, you'll run into an island that has something like that going on, but those are the small minority. Probably 50% of the islands are just small little things that have literally nothing on them. And then the rest are one of those three. And then the actually cool islands are related to the story and have very little use outside of it, with the exception of Thunderhead Island. That one has lots of cool stuff in it, but yeah. So unfortunately, I was pretty disappointed by the islands.
All right, fair enough. All right, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the disagreeer here. Well, atmosphere, I just want to put out there. I think that all tiers, sky, depths, surface, I honestly would just give like a flat 5 to all of them, just because I think atmosphere is just or one of the game's biggest strengths. Absolutely. But as far as the gameplay goes, I agree with all of your guys' complaints, even though I just said I was a disagreeer. But I do find that we're discounting certain areas, like there's one, I think it's called like Lightcast Island or something similar to that, which was really cool. Used a lot of really cool puzzles. But the islands also include the labyrinths, which are sort of isolated sections. But those story sections are still part of the sky. So like the lead up to the Wind Temple is one of the best parts of the game by and large, in my opinion. I find it was absolutely enthralling having to work with Tulin to ascend and like scale up, and then the music is like building up as you're climbing higher, and then you kind of launch above the clouds, and there's just that moment where the music just drops and it lets you just like take in the apex of this moment. Similarly, the water temple, the lead up to it, I didn't like the water temple itself, but the lead up to it was really cool. All that stuff you could do in the sky, and Neighbor, you mentioned like the story moments. There's not much to do afterwards, but I mean, you can farm some resources, but otherwise, you could say that about all the best parts of these games, right? Like all the best parts of Ocarina of Time, the story moments. There's nothing to do in the Forest Temple after you beat it, sure, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't great. So I don't know. I find it's I agree that like the sort of more filler islands, I mostly use them like, okay, here's this random plus shaped island. It's mostly just a rest stop so my battery can refill while I move on to wherever else I'm going. And the Shrine Quest did get samey, and those were a letdown. Fully willing to agree there. But the highs were so high, pun intended, that the lows are, I'm willing to look past the lows because of how great those high moments were for me. So yeah, I found there's a lot of middling meh there, but there are some superbly fantastic, wonderful moments that I think elevate the experience. There's all these puns, but I'm sorry, I can't stop. It just happens. But yeah, I think that those elevate, like if we're just talking the sky in general, we have to like account for those moments in the sky as well, which were really, really quite great. But it also helps that I didn't do the sky or the depths or the surface all in one go. Like my playthrough was very mixed. Like I'll be in Akala and I'll explore on the surface, and then I'll go up to the sky for a little bit, and then I'll come down, and then there's a chasm, I'll go into the depths for a little bit and explore down there, and then I'll come back up. And so I think that helped it not feel so samey for me, just because of the way I was playing was so eclectic, that I wasn't really lingering in one area for too long before moving on to the next. I was just like all over the map, so to speak. So that might have helped my experience feel not so redundant. But yeah, I found those moments, when it's good, it's like really good, and when it's not really good, it's just like it's fine, and that's it. So yeah, that's what I'll say. So gameplay, I don't know how to give it a numerical rating with that, because it is such a mixed bag. But I don't know, maybe we'll just say because of the bad was so bad but the good was so good, I'll just like a slap it in the middle and say 3 for gameplay.
I'm gonna jump in there and respond if I can.
Yeah.
So it is true, like when you said that the Forest Temple you have no in Ocarina of Time. You have no reason to come back to it because you're not meant to. That's true, but that's also not how the game design of Ocarina of Time works. Whereas that is how the game design of these open air games work. In Breath of the Wild, once you beat the Divine Beast in Death Mountain, there is still a ton of things to do around Death Mountain. You know, and same with like Zora's Domain. Once you beat the Divine Beast there's still tons of stuff to do. Even outside of the city, there's lots of Koroks to find and things like that. And the 2 ground-based temples in Tears of the Kingdom, there's still plenty of stuff to do around those areas, but the Sky Islands in particular are outliers in this case, where it's kind of actually a letdown to discover those places before you start the story of those, because there's, you know, you get to the top and then you find out you can't really go forward without the power that champion offers you, which is a bit underwhelming to finally see what you think is a cool, unique island just for it to turn out to be something for the story that you can't touch yet. And once you do finish the story, those islands have really no use for you, which is at complete opposite design of how the areas around the Divine Beasts were, and it's sort of the design philosophy of the game in general. So that would be my gentle pushback.
If I could counterpoint, when you beat the
objection,
no, it's like fair, my bad. When you beat the Divine Beasts, though, you can't even re-enter them in Breath of the Wild, right?
Oh yeah, and I'm talking about the areas around them though, like the lead up to the Water Temple, whereas the areas around the Divine Beasts, which would be the lead up to the Water Temple, does have things to do and see in Breath of the Wild, whereas the Water Temple itself, it would not matter to me at all if the Water Temple had no reason to come back to it.
The Water Temple already has almost no reason to exist, but I really didn't like that dungeon. I'm sure we'll come back to that subject.
Oh yes, we are.
But yeah, it sucks because I've always said I'm a Water Temple stan, pre-Tears of the Kingdom, because I love Ocarina of Time's Water Temple. But now I'm like, can I even call myself that now? Can I?
Well,
Fake fan.
but then there's the whole discussion of, do we consider these dungeons or just non-traditional dungeons? So
right, they're somewhere in the middle, but I'm sure that's in the list of topics. But I think the way they were designed, like those Sky Island areas, like they were kind of designed to be almost a part of the dungeon, or like just an extension of the dungeon itself. So like it sucks that you can even go to them early. Like they should have found a way to either make it so that when you get there you can do whatever you need to do, or do whatever part of that story without having to just leave and come back, or they should have barred off access entirely until that story or something. So I do agree with that point, but yeah, I feel like they were designed sort of as just like parts of the, like almost an extension of the dungeon, which, if looking at it that way, makes the Water Temple almost a little better, but because I thought the lead up to it was really good. But yeah, I mean, you do raise a good point. I mean, because Ancient Zora Waterworks, for example, there's still a reason to go back there after. There's a whole side quest there, but there's not really much to do in like those cool floating boats. I don't remember what they're called. I'm a terrible fan, but the little floated boats. There's no reason really to go back there, but like that still initial experience was still like one of the best parts of the game. So I don't know. I get your point. I just feel like I'm willing to look past it more, if that makes sense.
That's totally fair.
Yeah. Gives variety. That's why we have so many people here. All right, Josh, your ratings.
Yeah, I'm gonna give the sky portion of the game a solid 4, mainly because just the views for me never stopped being amazing. Every time there was a sunrise, sunset, or I was standing at a really high view on a sky island, it always took my breath away. I mean, I know some people are different, and sometimes it just, as you see it more and more, it just becomes a little less special, but for me, I never really lost that. Gameplay wise, I really enjoy jumping from Sky Island to Sky Island. I do agree there should have been a bit more variety. Like I really enjoyed the the quest with Tulin, getting to the Wind Temple and going through just the winter portion of the Sky Islands, and the anti-gravity kind of thing with the Water Temple with Sidon. I really enjoyed that. And then the stuff on the Thunder Isle, is it the Thunder Sky Island? Thunder Isle, I think is what it is. I really enjoyed that. I kind of wish there were a bit more Sky Islands, though, because I actually went back and just kind of rewatched some of the trailers again, just for old time's sake. And the E3 2021 trailer that we got, where it showed the sky for the very first time, there were Sky Islands in that trailer that were cut that are not in the final game. I realized that. And that last shot of that trailer where it shows Link using Ascend, what we didn't know was Ascend for the first time, the Sky Island that he's standing on in that trailer is not in the final game. And I was like, interesting. So I wonder how many more Sky Islands were cut. So yeah, I kind of wish there was a bit more, and I kind of agree with all of your points. I kind of wish there was a bit more variety, but I enjoyed exploring the sky, and I kind of played very similar to Daniel, because I would play in the sky at some point, and then I would jump down in the surface and just explore, and then I would go into the depths. And yeah, I was never in one place for too long. I was all over the place. Like, I remember when I jumped onto I descended into Hyrule for the first time. I was like, I want to go see how this world has changed. I want to go back to the Great Plateau and see how that's changed. I want to go to Kakariko and see what's happening over there. I want to go, to Lurlin Village and see what's happening down there. All these different places, and then I saw the chasm. I was like, ooh, let's go down into the depths and see what this is all about. And so I was all over the place. So yeah, I played very similar to Daniel, and I enjoyed it just all around, and never really got tired of it. I know some people are different, and they need a bit more variety and stuff like that, but I enjoyed it from all the way from start to finish.
Awesome. All right, and finally, Gaming Reinvented, your ratings.
I'd say probably a 3 overall, but I'd say it's weird because it's kind of mostly influenced by the story content more than the actual optional stuff. Because the dungeons up there are pretty good, the Great Sky Island is pretty good, and the mazes are pretty good, and then everything else is basically copy and paste. And that's kind of the problem, isn't it? It's like you start out really good with the Great Sky Island, you think, oh, there's going to be a lot of sky content, a lot of these islands up here, a lot of things to do, these are all varied, multiple biomes, that sort of thing. And then you get to them and oh, they're just the same layouts, copy and paste a bunch of times, the same quests a bunch of times. And it's like, I don't get it. It's like, what happened? Well, how did it go from such a fancy intro area to such a repetitive other areas, I guess?
Fair enough.
I will say though that I feel like the story content in general, I feel like stuff like Water Temple, I'd say the lead up was probably better than the actual dungeon. Like the lead up to these areas often actually felt more interesting than the actual puzzles in the dungeon did, probably because you use your abilities more, whereas the dungeons felt like just mostly key and lock puzzles with the sages.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially about the Water Temple, which we're definitely going to get to. Poor Sidon, love his character, not his ability. It's just a thing. Also, I think I interrupted you, Drake. Did you have anything else?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in real quick. That you guys said that you played by being a little bit in the sky, a little bit on the surface, a little bit in the depths. That's also sort of how I played. But what ended up happening was that I had a lot of depths and the sky left over. So by the time I was finishing off not even the playthrough, just the save file, because I've already beaten the final boss, and I was just doing rounds just to clear the remaining light routes and shrines, and that's when the repetition really kicked in. And for the initial portion of the playthrough, I happened to not do sky all that much. I did a little bit, so a lot of the sky was left for the end, for that marathon, and it was awful.
That's fair.
Fair. I think it's kind of indicative of a larger issue or a larger design philosophy where I think both this game and Breath of the Wild were not made with completing it 100% in mind. Like I fully don't believe the Zelda team ever made these games with the idea of people are gonna 100% complete these games.
Absolutely.
And I think that goes counter to how I like to play, because I am a total completionist. I did 100% Breath of the Wild multiple times. So
What?
Yeah, multiple times over the years.
All Koroks?
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, Hester's gift was a terrible reward in Breath of the Wild, and I was like, well, yeah, but it's like, if they gave you a really good reward, then they're encouraging you to actually get 100%, and that's not what they had in mind.
Right.
And because of how much of a pain it is to get all 900, it's like, well, they have to give you something, but they can't give you something too good, because they don't want to actually outright encourage you to enjoy that madness, basically.
Well,
they want to give you enough that, like, okay, no matter where you go, you can get enough to upgrade your inventory, and that's enough of a reward.
Yeah.
But, that's, I don't know. I feel like I love a good 100% completion reward. I think Majora's Mask probably still the game that does that the best in the series. Just by giving you just the power to just obliterate anything. But yeah, I just feel like that's just not what they wanted to achieve here, and it's like, that's fine, but it definitely is something I take a little bit of issue with, because I'm definitely a completionist kind of guy myself. So
Yeah.
Good.
I will say,
Good that
sorry, didn't you?
Yeah. I was going to say, good that you mentioned Hestus gift,
Right.
because that's like, I agree. They made it very clear with that reward that they don't want you to get all of the Koroks, and that's okay to just pass off on them, and that's what I did with Tears of the Kingdom as well. The problem with shrines is that if not for the reward that you get for completing all of the shrines in Tears of the Kingdom, I would have given up on the Sky Shrines.
Mm-hmm.
But I needed that for footage.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I did the same thing where I needed it for footage. So yeah, I feel that's actually really funny. That's the exact same reason that I was like rushing to finish those last shrines that I was missing. I was like missing 2, and then it came up in a video where I was like, oh, I know about this, but I need footage of it. So I was like rushing to find those last 2 shrines. Yeah.
I feel like with Switch games in general, I feel like they're designed for you to come back every like day, week, etc. over a year, rather than do it like all at once, which is kind of a problem if you're a completionist. Like stuff like this game and Breath of the Wild, Odyssey and Hyrule Warriors, etc. They're basically complete hell to try and complete it in a rush, because there's just so much repetitive content. But if you try to do them over time, I'm guessing it's probably more fun, because it's less at once, so like 20 minutes here, say a Sky Shrine here, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think similarly, which this is going to sound really random at first, Animal Crossing. There is no completion to Animal Crossing, but you don't try to fulfill your 5-star island and get the perfect house and the perfect island in one run through over a couple months. It's designed to be over several months, which I know Animal Crossing and Zelda very different. Those are my 2 main ones. For the sake of time, I am going to go ahead and move on to the next world.